Professor Denis Cryle now brings a biographer's perspective to Charles Todd and the Overland Telegraph Line. Denis Cryle is Professor in Communication and Media at Central Queensland University. He's lectured and researched in the fields of history and communication for 3 decades and has authored and edited several books on colonial biography and the Australian print media. He is the recipient of a collaborative Australian Research Council grant on the Empire and Commonwealth Press Union 2004 to 2006 and has also published in recent international book collections on Empire and Commonwealth communications. He's currently researching and writing a biography of Sir Charles Todd.
Thanks, Rob. Can everyone hear me okay? Great, all right. So a graphical perspective on Todd in the context of today's symposium is obviously a fairly daunting one. So I'll make a start today, and I'm focusing mainly on the Overland Telegraph because, of course, it's the 140th year of celebration. Really, since his death in 1910, our knowledge of Todd's life and his achievements has been confined to fairly brief and, although numerous, dictionary entries, mainly from the Victorian period. In more recent decades, the biographical enterprise has been characterised by bouts of enthusiasm and frustration, even while his stature has continued to grow on the national stage. And I can assure you there is a tradition of Todd studies in Queensland, where I come from as well. Nevertheless, Todd family members, both Australian and British descendants, some of who are present with us today, have remained important sources of information and inspiration, to whom I'm personally grateful in pursuing the elusive objective of full-length biography, along with support and generosity provided by my own institution and the organisers of today's symposium, especially Mac. Just like to specifically mention Stephen Gillum-Smith. Stephen couldn't be here today, who has been extremely helpful to, I guess, any number of Todd scholars, and also Barry and Ola, who are here today and have also been extremely supportive, along with Anne Moyle. Quite. Let me also acknowledge the efforts of George W. Symes, who wrote Todd's ADB entry. To Symes we owe an authoritative account of the Overland Telegraph Line, and there's no doubt this is part of his seminal achievement, although there are many other scientific and diverse public endeavours upon which Todd willingly embarked. Symes also saw the need for a biography of Todd, but concluded after many years of labour on the subject that, quote, "the man remains a shadowy figure." And we've heard a little bit about his humour. The lack of a well-rounded biography detracts from our understanding of the genesis of the Overland Telegraph itself. Planning and constructing the line was a remarkable feat, which has conferred on Todd unusual colonial status, won him a reputation as an outstanding organiser. Many have gone there since Symes and documented his weighty contribution to a number of critical points as planner and manager. Some, of course, have contested this, and there's an interesting literature to be had on that as well. I don't propose to rehearse all those claims and counterclaims today, but I do want to ask what fresh perspectives contemporary biography could bring to the well-documented and powerful story of the Overland Telegraph. How might this further our understanding of Todd the person as well as the manager? I'm seeking to introduce personal and social perspectives into my account. This seems to me in line with current biographical thinking. And this would involve identifying what I regard as the main or key characters who were drawn together or pulled apart during the drama of Todd's 10-month absence from Adelaide in the north. The larger actors are probably well known, the telegraph companies and the states, of course Queensland bidding very hard right to the end against South Australia for the land link from the underwater cable. So what are historic individuals and personalities? My own background is in communication as well as history, so I'm interested in interpersonal and the media communication involved here. For amid the excitement and expectations surrounding the telegraph, there were human relationships and emotions playing out over a protracted period of months and even years. We have a couple of slides of Alice there. These look to be taken in studio, and they're a little earlier than the Overland Telegraph. The one you've seen with Charles is probably from the 1850s. This would be from the 1860s, so it's a few years earlier, and probably being sent back to the family in Cambridge. So you can see the boys there in their dressed up outfits, and Alice also looking quite formal. So I would argue that Alice is one of the key players here at the other end of the line, and that for Charles, who's the husband and father, he's now by then got 4 children. In fact, no, it's 5, and I think there's one still to come, Lorna. So there's a need to maintain contact with Alice and family at the observatory in Adelaide. And Alice, who is nursing the baby, it says Gwendolyn, watching the map of the telegraph route which is fixed to her living room wall, has to keep the observatory going. It's a familiar theme, of course. She's also looking after Charles's meteorological measurements, and she's grappling with his financial affairs. So the correspondence reveals some of the twists and turns of what must have been a pretty complicated kind of schedule, knowing Charles. She's also apprehensive about his health, with concerns about fever, and his first letter expected from the north fails to arrive, so it's a complicated postal itinerary through various colonies dropped off in ports and so on. Their subsequent correspondence after Charles reaches his destination confirms the closeness of the young family, extending to the elder children. Lizzie and Charlie both write to their father in the field, and Charles actually writes back, and one of the letters has 3 a.m. in the morning written on it. To give you some idea of the workload he must have been shouldering. The other interesting thing is that Charles's nephews arrive, and they travel to Darwin with the expedition. These are the sons of his elder brother. Or they help out around the observatory as well. In fact, I've been recently reading up on one of the nephews actually plays quite a significant role in keeping the communication open between Port Darwin and the Katherine during the monsoon. So there are a couple of Todds in this story already, and there are others. Todd's niece, Frances, who actually he visits in the northwest of the colony when he returns to Adelaide before he comes back, as well as Mrs. Bell, Alice's mother, who's resident with the Todds in the observatory in Adelaide. So from a biographer's perspective, this is a good story. It's a family story of separation, of uncertainty, of religious faith, and eventual reunion, with lots of confused communication along the way. Letters shared and missed, portraits and photos exchanged and exhibited, hasty telegrams, some of them unexpected or inopportune, involving confidences whispered through the intrusive medium of a telegraph operator, for example, as Alice complains, or in the case of Charles' untimely birthday telegram to her, which arrives in the course of the church service. So it's happened before mobiles as well. So putting the flesh on the bones of that story, which sees the protagonists out of their normal circumstances, stretched to their limit by the demands of both nature and technology, is fundamental, I think, to this part of the biography. The other significant actor in the drama is Charles Patterson. We can see Patterson and Todd in the centre there with Little, I think it's on Patterson's side, and Mitchell. And interestingly, Taylor, in his, I think, very worthwhile account of the Overland Telegraph, tells us that Captain Sweet, who eventually went into photography, he was one of the captains involved in taking the Omeo up the Roper, took several shots of this. This was a very carefully posed photograph. They're quite similar, but they're actually wearing different clothes. So obviously this was the one that was chosen as the better of the two. So what would the role of the biographer be in reassembling a complex sequence of events, the characters, the key scenes? And these are characterised as much by breakdowns in communication as by cooperation or connection, because even when Charles finally gets the overland cable up, of course, the underwater cable goes down for weeks. The other group, I think, worthy of mention, the Aborigines and the Larraquita, with whom Todd makes contact on the Roper River and around Port Darwin. And here too, communication tends to be confused and episodic. rather than sustained. So the upshot for a biography may well be a different kind of narrative from the Victorian heroic tradition in which Todd has generally been cast. One which stresses interpersonal qualities, wit, resilience, humour, planning and so on. We shouldn't be allowed to forget, however, that despite its ultimate success, the fate of the expedition, and with it both Todd's and Patterson's career, hung in the balance at that point in time. Telegraphy played a central role as the technology of the moment, but it was by no means the only form of communication involved. There were letters, dispatched from various locations, reaching the recipients in some places, though not in others. There were newspapers bundled up and sent to the north by Todd family members, telegrams received by vessel or by horse for a period of time from the Northern Territory to South Australia. All of this, of course, poses a narrative complexity which is as daunting as it is compelling for a working biographer. Biography is by no means the only thread in the complex Overland Telegraph master narrative. Many other speakers today will describe and document other achievements in science, exploration, surveying, engineering, all of which I think contribute to the overland story itself. But the narrative tension, the parts played by central characters, vivid and interesting, should not be forgotten in the retelling of that great work, for it marks one of the defining episodes in the broader biographical narrative which I'm endeavouring to compile. So this is Todd in his best dress. I think the family were rather disappointed in the Overland Telegraph photo. They thought this was probably the way it should look. But obviously Todd's strategy was to be with the men, and he was very effective both in the telegraphic side as well as the postal side. So I think I'll leave it there. It's a very big story, but there's a human and a moral dimension to the event, I think. And with it comes a great responsibility for Todd, and that is to maintain the line. So one of the stories is about constructing the line, but I think the other story, which Todd continues many, many years, is how to maintain the line and also essentially administer the workforce, which are operating often very difficult circumstances. So thanks very much, everyone.